Shanks vs Blackbeard is very likely finally going to go down this year in 2025, and I will in this video reveal what Oda has said that essentially confirms this fight is finally happening. But I will first break down why Shanks vs Blackbeard would genuinely be the biggest fight in all of One Piece. The first time the idea of Shanks fighting Blackbeard was brought up in the manga was all the way back in 2006, when Shanks in the story went to meet Whitebeard. During their meeting, Shanks reveals that the scar he has over his left eye that we've seen since chapter 1 is actually a scar he received from Blackbeard. By Shanks' own words, this was no fluke, and Blackbeard had managed to scar him while Shanks had been fully on guard. Even at this point in the story, when Blackbeard was a nameless pirate with no bounty, Shanks still considered him extremely dangerous, where he tells Whitebeard that the whole reason why he came to meet him was so that Whitebeard would stop Ace from hunting down Blackbeard. Whitebeard, however, does not agree, and only laughs in Shanks' face, refusing him and telling Shanks that he had no business giving him advice. However, we later discover that Whitebeard was actually lying here, and only told Shanks off to save face. Whitebeard himself had also gotten a bad feeling about Blackbeard, and he had actually commanded Ace not to go after him for this very reason, where Ace had in fact gone against Whitebeard's orders by trying to hunt him down. This is honestly huge, as Whitebeard's iron rule in life is to not let anyone harm his family, and he himself says that letting Blackbeard go was a special exception. While some may think that Blackbeard started the story as a very low-level character, this was arguably never the case, where two of the four emperors already viewed him as a threat right from the beginning. And it turns out that both Shanks and Whitebeard's instincts were right, where Blackbeard ended up capturing Ace and handing him to the government, which itself resulted in the Summit War, where Blackbeard both personally killed Whitebeard and stole his devil fruit. The Summit War was also where Blackbeard had his short reunion with Shanks, where Shanks literally told Teach to his face that he was ready to fight him right then and there, making it clear that these two characters were set to clash in the future. Blackbeard at Marineford refused Shanks' challenge, though he forebodingly said that this was only for the moment, where Blackbeard was not yet ready to face him, hinting that Teach also thinks that Shanks is someone he has to beat in the future. In the current story, both Shanks and Blackbeard are Emperors of the Sea, and both have been set up as some of the biggest players in the war for the One Piece that will serve as the climax of the story. The two are also very much still set up to fight, where Shanks is literally monitoring Blackbeard's movements. And, in fact, the entire reason why Shanks came to Wano was because he thought Blackbeard would be there. Shanks and Blackbeard finally fighting each other would at this point very easily be the biggest fight the One Piece story has ever shown. It is by far and away the longest build-up fight in the story not to involve the Straw Hats, whereas brought up before, it has been 19 years since the idea of this fight was first brought up, and hints of Shanks' connection with Blackbeard are seen all the way back since chapter 1. And while we have witnessed both Shanks and Blackbeard in action throughout the story, we have arguably never seen either character show their full power, as the fights the two have been involved in have always been either cut short or not shown at all. The only fights that have been built up for this long are arguably Zoro vs Mihawk, and Luffy's own fights with Shanks and Blackbeard. Yet in my opinion, Shanks vs Blackbeard is in many ways even more interesting than these fights. Because this is not a fight that involves the Straw Hats, it is actually far harder to predict which of the two would end up winning. We've already seen the story playing around with these kinds of fights, where we've recently seen a lot of non-Straw Hat matchups like Garp vs Aokichi, Law vs Blackbeard, and Kid vs Shanks, and I'm pretty sure that this is something that will keep happening throughout the final saga, where we will witness more and more huge battles all over the world not involving the Straw Hats, including Shanks vs Blackbeard. Now, for the thing I promised in the intro, let me explain why Eiichiro Oda has essentially confirmed that this fight is going to happen not only in the ongoing Elbaf arc, but this year in the manga. Back in 2023, Oda did his usual Jump Festa interview, which is something he does every year to build up the next year of the One Piece manga. In this particular interview, Oda said that a long-anticipated fight between two unnamed characters would happen in the manga in 2024. Now, we are currently in 2025, and I think it is safe to say that the fight Oda was talking about did not actually happen last year. This is nothing too surprising, as Oda's messages about the story often get delayed beyond his expectations, and Oda did have a lot of unexpected breaks in 2024. What should however be noted is that all of Oda's predictions do however have a record of eventually coming true, and this very likely means that the fight he was talking about is still going to happen, but that it got pushed back to 2025. Here is the important part though. There really is no other fight Oda could be talking about here than Shanks vs Blackbeard. This is because Oda says that this is a long anticipated fight, and as talked about earlier, Shanks vs Blackbeard is essentially the only anticipated fight in the story that does not involve the Straw Hat Pirates. This detail is key, because it is currently extremely unlikely that any of the Straw Hats' anticipated matchups will happen in the near future. The crew is currently on Elbaf, yet their long setup opponents are all on different islands. Mihawk is with Buggy and the Cross Guild, Blackbeard is at Pirate Island, and Shanks has very literally just left Elbaf. The Straw Hats are also currently very busy with the other characters and plots that are happening in the Land of the Giants, where they now have to deal with the invasion of the Gods' Knights coming down on the island. With everything the crew has to deal with, it is simply very hard to imagine that something like Mihawk vs Zoro would now of all times happen, in Elbaf of all places. It is therefore all but guaranteed that the fight Oda was talking about does not involve the Straw Hats. Now, there is an argument that Oda could be talking about a fight that would actually happen in flashback. For example, we've yet to see fights such as Akainu vs Aokichi or the God Valley incident, and these are very clearly battles fans have been anticipating to see for a long time. If we look at Oda's message, however, it is evident that he is talking about a fight that has not yet happened in the story. In the message, Oda says that the outcome of this fight will be unexpected, which very much means that he is talking about a fight that has yet to be decided. So, if the fight is something that fans have been anticipating for a while, and it is not going to involve the Straw Hats, and it is a fight that is going to happen in the present story, genuinely, the only option that we're left with is Shanks vs Blackbeard. I've honestly racked my brain trying to think of other options, and can't think of anything else that would match Oda's words. There's definitely a lot of very interesting fights that could happen in this story, like for example, Shanks vs Shamrock, or Dragon vs Emu, but I don't think any of them are genuinely that anticipated by fans, where if they happened, I think the general reaction would be more close to something like, wow, these two are actually fighting. And here is one last big reason why I think Oda is talking about Shanks vs Blackbeard. It actually makes perfect sense for this fight to happen right now. I know a lot of fans think that it is simply too early for this fight to go down, so let me try to make my case why currently might be the perfect time for the clash between the Red Hair Pirates and the Blackbeard Pirates. This is because of a detail I already brought up earlier, which is that Shanks was already willing to fight Blackbeard during the Wano arc. The entire reason why Shanks sailed his crew to Wano was that he was convinced that Blackbeard himself would go there to attack the Straw Hats after they were still wounded from their fight against Kaido and his forces. Naturally, Shanks did not get his opportunity to fight Teach in Wano, but he clearly still wants to beat him. This is even more because of the fact that, after years of laying dormant, Shanks has now actively started hunting the One Piece, and he's willing to take out any rival pirate crews who stand in his way. Even more interesting, however, is that according to Buggy, there's rumors that Shanks is finally making his big move. Buggy says this in chapter 1082, which was after Shanks had already beaten Kid, and this likely means that Shanks has not yet made this supposed move in the story. Personally, I think that Shanks' move could be even bigger than most fans would expect. I think Shanks might literally just sail to Pirate Island and attack Blackbeard. This is because the story has now presented Shanks with the perfect opportunity to do this. Unlike the Red Hair Pirates, the Blackbeard Pirates were actually hit very hard during the previous arc. While Shanks dealt with Kid in one move, Law actually put up a fight against Blackbeard. But even more importantly, Garp left Pirate Island a complete wreck after he went there to rescue Kobe, where he ended up giving a whooping to half of Blackbeard's crew. While the Red Hair Pirates are currently at 100%, the Blackbeard Pirates are likely still recovering from their fights in the last arc, where in the timeline, it has only been 2 days since they fought. If this wasn't bad enough, Blackbeard does not even have all of his officers at home base, where Lafitte, one of his top men, is currently away on a mission spying on the government. This could in fact be the moment Shanks has been waiting for 4 years, and considering that he was already willing to fight Blackbeard in Wano, I genuinely do not see why he would not take this opportunity. Shanks makes it clear in chapter 1 that he has no problem fighting dirty, and it would be perfectly in character for him to take advantage of the Blackbeard pirate's current weakened status. Now that Shanks has said that he's finally going for the One Piece, Blackbeard could also have something Shanks desperately needs if he wants to go to Laugh Tale. From what we know, Shanks is still not confirmed to have a rubbing of Zou's Road Poneglyph. The 2 confirmed Road Poneglyph rubbings Shanks got from Kid were those of Wano and Whole Cake Island, and I personally do not think there's any evidence that he had more than these 2. However, Blackbeard is currently very likely in possession of Zou's rubbing, as he just defeated Law, who personally got the rubbing from Zou itself. Blackbeard could however have something even more important than this that Shanks would want, which is someone to decipher the language of the Poneglyphs. The Blackbeard pirates recently kidnapped Pudding, who is one of the handful of characters with the potential to read the ancient language. From what we know, Shanks himself has no confirmed way to actually read the ancient language, and it is clearly something that he would need if he wants to go to Laugh Tale. What this all could mean is that it's not just Oda, but the story itself may be heavily moving in a direction where it makes perfect sense for Shanks vs Blackbeard to finally happen, where Shanks' big move could well be attacking the Blackbeard pirates at this perfect opportunity. It would essentially be a grand slam for Shanks, where he could potentially get both his 3rd Poneglyph and a way to interpret the ancient language, while also finally getting to destroy his biggest rival when he is weakened. Cherry on top, Shanks would get to free Luffy's grandfather in the process, as we already know Shanks doesn't mind saving good marines, and he likely doesn't want to see Luffy lose another family member. Now, there is still the big elephant in the room that should be addressed. Is it too early for Blackbeard to kill Shanks in the story? It's no secret that most fans believe that the outcome of Shanks vs Blackbeard would be Blackbeard killing Shanks, where if you do a bit of googling, you'll find a lot of fan content about this happening in the story. If you want to put a number to it, last year I did a community poll on the topic, where 74% of voters thought that Blackbeard would beat Shanks if they fought, and most of the comments thought this meant that he would kill Shanks. This is clearly the expected outcome of the fight among fans, and this to me makes this all incredibly interesting. If you recall, the very thing Oda said about the fight he was talking about in the earlier interview was that the outcome could be unexpected. I am currently convinced that Shanks will in fact be the one who will beat Blackbeard when they fight, and that this is exactly the unexpected outcome Oda was talking about before. I have a lot of reasons why I think this is what will happen, but they unfortunately go beyond the scope of this video. If you'd like to see me make a video about why Shanks is guaranteed to beat Blackbeard though, I can definitely still do it, where let's say if this video gets over 1000 likes, I'll immediately start working on that video. Oh, and by the way, since you've made it this far into the video, it's time I plunder your wallet by making you a member of this channel. Just look at the names of these civilians who've already fallen to my channel. You've made a big mistake by venturing into these waters. Or, in other words, if you like my content and would like to give me extra support, definitely check out the membership option. I'd really appreciate it. As always though, thanks a lot for watching this video to the end.